What's good, everyone? This is Bamboozled Black Baby Boomer, aka B4, with another video. As you can probably tell, my voice does not carry this high of a pitch. There is a reason for that. The B4 channel is the channel that I use here on YouTube to say the things that I really want to say that some folks may not agree with or may find offensive and could hinder my efforts to grow professionally. I do use another YouTube channel that carries my normal voice, which is much deeper. So I ask you all who are subscribers to please bear with me and bear with my higher pitch and just take in the message. You might be wondering why I call myself Bamboozled Black Baby Boomer, aka B4. That's because I feel like I've been bamboozled. It wasn't anybody's fault. It's just how life turned out. I was born as a late-stage baby boomer in the late 50s. Throughout the 1960s, I would always hear about President Johnson, Vietnam, President Johnson, Vietnam. I grew up with both of my parents, which a lot of black people today don't seem to have. Most of these black households are seemingly run by single mothers. And it's a shame that the single mothers get most of the blame while the guys that made the babies go on and make like Papa was a Rolling Stone, to quote the Temptations. So my childhood was basically relative ignorance of things having to do with race and politics and all that sort of rot. For example, I didn't know who Martin Luther King was until the day he was assassinated, when a neighbor lady came running into our house saying, King was killed, King was killed. And I go, whose King was killed? Then a couple of months later, my mother tells me Kennedy was shot. And I said, yeah, Mom, I already knew that President Kennedy was killed. She said, no, not John Kennedy, his brother, Robert. I'm like, okay. I didn't know what to think about that. I'm like, daggone, just people are getting killed all over the place. Again, this was 1968. Of course, I didn't know how tumultuous things were. I was an 8-year-old kid. Age 12 was the first time I had ever heard of the Ku Klux Klan. Red Fox on Sanford and Son made reference to the KKK. And I'm like, asking my father, because he's sitting in there watching Sanford and Son with me, I'm asking him, Dad, what is the KKK? He goes, Ku Klux Klan. So I look up Ku Klux Klan and find out they were a terrorist organization formed after the Civil War. And unfortunately, they still exist. America is an interesting place. At this stage of my life, I'm in my late 50s now, and I have seen a lot of changes. In some ways, I feel like the frog that's in the water and the heat is slowly turned up over time, and before you know it, your insides are cooked. That's kind of how I feel right about now. See, I went to college on the advice of my elders, my parents. Go to college, get a good job. But what they didn't tell me, of course they had no way of knowing either, that we were going to go through changes. One of them was the election of Ronald Reagan, who convinced a lot of America, including some baby boomers, that government was the problem, despite the fact that government had done a lot of good things and developed the country after World War II. But what I'm seeing now is I'm seeing a country that's in somewhat disrepair, and nobody's doing anything about it. And we baby boomers get the blame. I didn't know that we were supposed to, rebuild, especially us black folk. Now, the young millennials like to blame us, baby boomers, for the state of black America today. And I'm like, look, nobody told me that I had to keep on building and keep on getting on economically. In other words, nobody said anything to me about entrepreneurship. No one said anything to me about building up a business. Nobody said anything to me about generational wealth. It was all about going to Mr. Charlie to get a job. And here's what happened when I went to Mr. Charlie to get a job. Sooner or later, Mr. Charlie decides he don't need your black ass anymore. I have been laid off of W-2 positions of employment 9 times since 1996. Hard to build up wealth when you're at the mercy of employers. And these days, there are no unions, and unless you're represented by a union or have an employment agreement, an employer today, under the doctrine of at-will employment, can bounce your ass out like a basketball. Let that sink in for a bit. And then you have the vicissitudes of life. Sometimes things happen. I'm married to a lady who was helping me out, and unfortunately, the inside of her body had other ideas. Her immune system turned on her, and she ended up with an autoimmune disease that slows her down and renders her unable to work full time. So that is a cut in income as well. Like I said, things happen. But what really gets to me is I go on social media, and I probably shouldn't. I go on the internet, I go on YouTube, and I see all this crap about why baby boomers haven't saved for retirement, blah, blah, blah. I mean, come on. It's kind of hard to save money when you're using W-2 income to just maintain. It's kind of hard, and especially when you keep getting your income interrupted because you're getting laid off. Now, you can say, well, you could have worked 2 jobs, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, I could work myself to death that way. I was in corporate jobs. You don't always work from 9 to 5. You don't punch a clock. A lot of nights, you're working until the job is done. I can't tell you how many late nights I have put in. I would have loved to have been able to have a side hustle. A matter of fact, I did have a side hustle once. The problem was my regular job kept bleeding into the time I would use for my side hustle. So I had to give up the side hustle. That's how it goes. So it's not for lack of trying. Yes, I'm a baby boomer. I'm a black baby boomer. I'm a late-stage baby boomer. Please don't blame me for the state of black America. A lot of our elders were basically fighting for basic human dignity. It's very easy, in hindsight, to go back and blame those folks for not emphasizing economic freedom for African Americans or black Americans or whatever you want to call us. But now that we know, at least I am trying to build up something to try to leave to my children or grandchildren. I figure I have 20 more years and I'll dedicate my life to trying to build something up. I don't know quite what it is yet, but I will try to build up something. That's why I'm here on YouTube. Maybe I'll blow up and make a few bucks. Who knows? Maybe not. Just want to say that I call myself bamboozled because it feels like I've been bamboozled, but it's just a confluence of things that have happened over the last, 30 or 40 years, and a lot of it has to do with that stuff they call neoliberalism, globalism, whatever, immigration. Truth be told, I see what's going on with our current president, and I've been hearing that it's been the globalists versus the nationalists. I'm almost inclined to go with the nationalists, although that sounds kind of funky because you've got white nationalists, black nationalists, whatever. What we really need to be doing is coming together on the same side and putting aside our differences, because I think we're getting played, because I think we're getting played by the people at the top. And as long as we're squabbling, they're, collecting the spoils. I'm a guy who tries to be reasonable and tries to look at solutions, and I am to the point now where I'm thinking 80 to 100 years ahead. I know it's too late for me. I hope to be able to enjoy the fruits of some of my labors, mainly by traveling to a few places, most notably maybe Ghana in West Africa. I'd love to set foot on West Africa before I leave this life. I think it's incumbent upon us tail end baby boomers, those of us in our 50s, to start thinking ahead to 2117. We would do well to think 80 to 100 years from now. I figure, like I said, I'm going to dedicate the rest of my life to trying to build some generational wealth within my own black family. And if we all do that, then we'll be okay. If you don't have a family or a blood family, then you might want to find a like-minded family. Fortunately, I come from a large family that I could rely on, but a lot of folks don't. If you liked this video, please hit the subscribe button and click on the bell so that when Bamboozled Black Baby Boomer uploads new content, you'll be notified. Until next time, deuces, peace, and God bless.